Admiral Jiwoo stood on the command deck of Earth's largest space station, watching the celebration below. Thousands of people gathered in the streets of every major city. Flags waved, children laughed, musicians played songs of hope and unity. Today was supposed to be the greatest day in human history. 7 million humans were on their way to humanity's first colony beyond the solar system. The fleet of 30 massive ships carried families, scientists, engineers, teachers, and dreamers. They were going to build a new world around a distant star. Jiwoo's daughter was on one of those ships. Her name was Hana, and she was 23 years old. Jiwoo had watched the fleet launch 3 months ago. She had hugged Hana goodbye, holding back tears as her daughter smiled with excitement. Hana wanted to be a botanist on the new world. She wanted to grow earth plants under alien suns. Now the fleet was only 2 days away from their destination. Then the screens changed. Every television, every computer, every phone on Earth suddenly showed the same image. An alien face appeared. The creature had silver skin and dark eyes that seemed too large for its narrow head. It wore elaborate robes that shimmered with colors humans had never seen before. The alien spoke in perfect English. Its voice was calm and cold. "I am Commander Valen of the Velkari Empire. We have intercepted your colony fleet. We are a superior civilization. We rule this region of space. You will submit to our authority, or you will face consequences." Jiwoo felt her heart stop. She grabbed her communication device and tried to contact the fleet. Nothing. The Velkari had blocked all signals. On Earth, President Jae-hoon was rushed into an emergency meeting. Military advisors, scientists, and diplomats crowded into the room. Everyone was shouting questions. No one had answers. Humanity had never met aliens before. They did not know what to expect. Diplomat Min-ji was at the United Nations when the broadcast began. She watched as representatives from every nation stared at the screens in shock. Some people prayed. Others wept. Everyone felt helpless. The alien fleet was light years away. Earth had no ships that could reach them in time. Commander Valen gave humanity 1 hour to respond. The message was simple. Acknowledge Velkari superiority and become subjects of their empire, or watch the colonists die. President Jae-hoon stood before the cameras. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. He spoke to the Velkari commander directly. "We are a peaceful species. We mean no harm. Please release our people. We can discuss terms. We can negotiate." Valen's response was immediate. "You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. Submit or they die. You have refused. Now you will watch." The screen changed again. This time it showed the interior of one of the colony ships. Humans were being herded into a large chamber. They looked confused and frightened. Children clung to their parents. Old people helped each other walk. They did not know what was happening. Then the killing began. The Velkari did not use quick weapons. They did not show mercy. They executed people slowly, one by one, making sure the cameras captured every moment. They broadcast it all. Every death. Every scream. Every tear. Jiwoo watched from the command deck, frozen in horror. She searched every face on the screen, praying she would not see Hana. But she knew her daughter was on one of those ships. Somewhere in that fleet, Hana was waiting her turn to die. The massacre continued for hours, then days. The Velkari took their time. They wanted Earth to understand their power. They wanted humanity to break. On Earth, cities fell silent. Factories stopped working. Schools closed. Everyone gathered around screens, unable to look away, unable to help. Parents held their children. Strangers comforted each other in the streets. The whole world mourned together. Dr. Taeyang was a scientist who had spent his life studying peaceful uses of technology. He watched the broadcasts from his laboratory, tears streaming down his face. His sister was on the colony fleet. She was a teacher. She loved children. Now she was gone. Captain Hee-jin commanded a small military outpost on Mars. She had friends on the colony ships. Good people. Brave people. She watched them die and felt rage building inside her like a fire. Her hands shook. Her jaw clenched. She memorized every detail of the Velkari faces on the screen. On the second day of the massacre, Min-ji attended an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. Earth had finally made contact with other alien species. Dozens of civilizations watched the Velkari broadcast.
Min-ji stood before them and begged for help. "Please," she said.
"Send ships. Send weapons. Send anything. Help us save our people. The alien ambassadors looked at her with what might have been pity. One of them, a tall creature with blue skin, spoke softly. We are sorry. The Valkyrie are too powerful. They have destroyed civilizations before. We cannot risk war with them. Your people are alone. Minji stared at them in disbelief. These advanced species with their mighty fleets and ancient wisdom would do nothing. They would watch 7 million humans die and offer only sympathy. On the third day, Jiwoo saw her daughter on the screen. Hana stood in line with hundreds of other colonists. She looked thin and exhausted. Her hands were bound. A Valkyrie soldier pushed her forward. The camera focused on her face. Hana looked directly at the camera. She knew her mother was watching. She did not cry. She did not beg. She stood straight and spoke clearly. Mom, I love you. Tell everyone at home that we are not afraid. Tell them to remember us. Tell them to be strong. Then the Valkyrie killed her. Jiwoo did not scream. She did not collapse. She stood perfectly still, watching the screen until it went dark. Something inside her changed in that moment. The grief would come later. Right now, there was only cold, perfect clarity. The massacre lasted 72 hours. When it ended, 7 million humans were dead. The Valkyrie broadcast one final message. Commander Valen appeared on screen again, looking as calm as before. This is what happens to those who do not submit. Consider this a lesson. Acknowledge our authority, or your species will follow your colonists into extinction. You have 1 week to respond. The screens went black. Earth was silent. In every city, in every home, people sat in darkness and grief. There was no panic, no riots, no chaos, just crushing absolute sorrow. That night, President Jae-hoon addressed the world. He stood alone in a dark room lit by a single light. His face showed every year of his age. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. My fellow humans, we have witnessed an evil beyond comprehension. 7 million of our brothers and sisters are gone. They were murdered in cold blood while the galaxy watched and did nothing. The Valkyrie demand our submission. They believe we will break. They believe we will surrender out of fear. He paused, and when he continued, his voice was harder. They are wrong. We will not submit. We will not surrender. We will not forget. The Valkyrie Empire believes they have taught us a lesson. They have. They have taught us that the universe is not kind. They have taught us that justice must be taken, not asked for. They have taught us what we are capable of when pushed beyond our limits. Jae-hoon looked directly into the camera. To the Valkyrie Empire. You wanted to make an example of us. You wanted to show your power. You have succeeded. We have seen what you are. Now you will see what we are. This is not a threat. This is not a promise. This is a simple statement of fact. The Valkyrie Empire will cease to exist. Your species will be erased from the universe. You killed 7 million of us. We will make sure not a single one of you survives to threaten anyone else ever again. He turned and walked away from the camera. The broadcast ended. In the command center, Jiwoo received new orders. She was now in charge of Earth's entire military. Her mission was simple: find a way to destroy the Valkyrie. All of them. Every single one she accepted without hesitation. She thought of Hana's final words. Be strong, she would be. She would be stronger than the Valkyrie could imagine. Across Earth, humans made the same decision. There would be no surrender, no negotiation, no mercy. The Valkyrie had shown humanity the worst of the universe. Now humanity would show them something the galaxy had never seen before. The age of innocence was over. The age of vengeance had begun. 3 days after President Jae-hoon's declaration, every satellite stopped transmitting. Every communication channel closed. Every diplomatic office shut down. The whole planet became silent. If aliens tried to contact Earth, they heard nothing. If they tried to spy on human activities, they saw nothing. It was as if humanity had vanished. Inside Earth, everything changed. Admiral Jiwoo stood in a massive underground facility built beneath the Swiss mountains. The room stretched for miles, filled with thousands of scientists and engineers working at computer stations. Guards stood at every entrance. No one entered or left without her permission. This was the war room. Every major nation had contributed their best minds to this place. The rules were simple. Find a way to destroy the Valkyrie completely or keep working until you did. Dr. Tae-yang led the weapons division. Before the massacre, he had spent 20 years developing clean energy technology. He had won awards for his peaceful innovations. Now he spent 16 hours a day designing weapons that could kill billions. He stood before a massive screen showing Velkari ship designs captured from their broadcasts. Every detail had been analyzed. Every weakness had been studied. The Velkari were technologically superior, but they had made one mistake. They had shown humanity what their ships looked like. Their shields use a rotating frequency, Tae-Yang explained to his team. We can match it. But we need faster computers. Much faster. A young woman named Yuna raised her hand. She was only 24, the youngest scientist in the facility. She had been working on quantum computer theory before the war. What if we do not match their frequency? Yuna suggested. What if we skip it entirely? Quantum entanglement allows instant communication across any distance. If we can weaponize that, Tae-Yang stared at her. Then he smiled for the first time in weeks. It was not a happy smile. That would work, he said quietly. That would work very well. Get me everything you have. While scientists worked underground, the military rebuilt itself above ground. Captain Hyejin stood on a training field watching her pilots run through combat drills. These were not ordinary soldiers. They had been selected from thousands of volunteers. Every single one had lost someone in the massacre. Every single one had sworn to die if necessary to hurt the Velkari. Hyejin pushed them harder than any human had ever been pushed. 20-hour training days, simulations that killed virtual pilots by the dozens, physical conditioning that left strong men crying in exhaustion. Anyone who complained was removed from the program. No one complained, again, Hyejin shouted as a pilot crashed in the simulator. You died. The mission failed. The Velkari survive, again. The pilot climbed back into the simulator without a word. His hands were shaking from exhaustion, but his eyes were clear. He would keep trying until he got it right. This was humanity now. No one needed to be forced. No one needed to be convinced. The whole species had become a single weapon pointed at one target. Months passed. Earth remained silent. Diplomat Minji maintained one secret communication channel with the Galactic Council. She fed them small pieces of information, carefully chosen to keep them curious but not alarmed. Yes, humanity was building weapons. Yes, they were preparing for war. No, they were not a threat to anyone except the Velkari. The alien ambassadors were nervous. They had never seen a species go completely dark before. They sent scouts to observe Earth. The scouts never returned. They tried to hack human computers. The systems were completely isolated. They attempted to plant spies. Every spy was caught within hours. The blue-skinned ambassador contacted Minji privately. What are you doing? He asked. The Velkari are growing concerned. They might attack Earth directly. Minji looked at him through the screen. Her face showed no emotion. Let them try, she said. Please let them come to us. It would save us the trouble of going to them. The ambassador went pale. He understood then that humanity had become something new, something dangerous. The Velkari did try to probe Earth's defenses. They sent 3 scout ships to the edge of the solar system. The ships were supposed to gather information and return. The ships vanished. No explosions, no debris, no signals. They simply stopped existing. The Velkari sent more scouts. Same result. They tried sending a full military squadron. 25 warships jumped into the solar system. None of them ever reported back. Commander Valen received reports of the missing ships. For the first time, he felt something he had not felt in decades. Concern. In the war room, Yuna made her breakthrough. She had been working for 14 months straight, sleeping only a few hours a day. Her hands shook from too much coffee. Her eyes were red from staring at screens. But she had done it. Quantum entanglement weapons are possible, she announced to the room. We can deliver a payload to any location in the galaxy instantly. No travel time, no warning. The target simply dies. The room went silent. Every scientist understood what this meant. Humanity had just leapfrogged thousands of years of technological development. They had created something the galaxy had never seen. Dr. Tae-Yang looked at the equations on Yuna's screen. He felt sick. These formulas would kill millions, maybe billions. He thought of his sister, her face on the broadcast, her final moments. He signed the approval form. Build it, he ordered. Build as many as we can. 18 months after the massacre, Admiral Jiwoo called a meeting with Earth's leadership. She stood before President Jae-hoon and the heads of every major military force on the planet. We are ready, she said simply. She pulled up a holographic display showing the entire Velkari Empire. Hundreds of star systems glowed in red. Each one had been mapped. Each one had been analyzed. Earth's intelligence network had found every Velkari world, every military base, every ship, every population center. We have 5,000 ships, Jiwoo continued. Each one uses technology the Velkari cannot counter. We have quantum weapons that can strike from anywhere. We have pilots trained to fly missions they will not survive. We have soldiers ready to fight on 1,000 worlds. She paused and looked directly at the president. But we need your authorization for the final phase. What we are planning is not war. War has rules. War has limits. What we are planning is extinction. Every Velkari must die. Every single one. Their species must end. If we do this, we cannot undo it. The galaxy will never see humanity the same way again. The room was quiet. Every person there understood the weight of this decision. They were not just planning to defeat an enemy. They were planning genocide on a scale never before attempted. President Jae-hoon stood up. He looked old and tired. The last 18 months had aged him 20 years, but his voice was firm. The Velkari murdered 7 million of our people while the galaxy watched. They did it to break us, to make us submit. They showed no mercy. They gave no quarter. They expected us to bow down in fear. He walked to the holographic display and looked at the glowing red stars. We made a promise. The Velkari Empire would cease to exist. We will keep that promise. Not because we enjoy killing, not because we are monsters, but because if we let them survive, they will do this again. To us or to someone else. We will not allow that. Jae-hoon pulled out a simple document. It had one sentence on it. Authorization for complete extinction protocol. He signed it with a steady hand. Admiral Jiwoo, you have full authorization. End them all, Jiwoo saluted. She took the document and left the room. She did not feel triumph. She did not feel excitement. She felt only the cold clarity of purpose. 1 week later, humanity's fleet emerged from the darkness. 5,000 ships appeared in strategic positions across 100 star systems. They had traveled in complete silence, using technology that made them invisible to Velkari sensors. Captain Hyojin sat in her command chair aboard the lead strike ship. Her pilots were ready. Her weapons were armed. She thought of her friends who had died 18 months ago. She thought of all the humans who would never see another sunrise. Admiral Jiwoo's face appeared on every ship's screen. She looked at her people, these warriors who had trained for this moment. She thought of Hana's final words. Be strong, all ships, she said quietly. Begin Operation Silence Falls, show no mercy. Take no prisoners, leave nothing alive. The Velkari wanted to make us fear them. Today they learned to fear us. She gave the order. The war began. One moment, 2,000 Velkari soldiers were working at their posts, monitoring their sensors, preparing for routine patrols. The next moment, they were gone. The base's reactor cores simply stopped existing. The explosions came after, tearing through metal and stone like paper. Across 47 star systems, the same thing happened at exactly the same instant. Military installations, shipyards, weapons factories, and command centers vanished in coordinated strikes. Yuna's quantum weapons worked perfectly. By the time Velkari sensors detected the attacks, billions were already dead. Commander Valen was in his personal quarters when the alarms began. He rushed to the command center and stared at the screens in disbelief. Red markers appeared everywhere, each one showing a destroyed facility. The humans had struck simultaneously across the entire empire. How is this possible? He demanded. They do not have this technology. They should not even have faster-than-light travel. His tactical officer's hands shook as he entered commands. More red markers appeared. Sir, we have lost 70% of our military infrastructure. The attacks are still ongoing. We cannot track their origin. The weapons appear from nowhere. Valen felt cold fear for the first time in his life. He sent an emergency broadcast to all Velkari forces. This is High Command. We are under attack by human forces. All ships return to defensive positions immediately. Prepare for... The communication tower exploded before he could finish. Captain Hyojin's strike team materialized inside a Velkari command ship. They had used experimental phase shift technology to bypass the shields entirely. One moment, the Velkari officers were alone in their secure room. The next moment, 20 armed humans stood among them. The fight was short and brutal. Velkari weapons were designed for long-range space combat. Human weapons were designed for killing at close range. In 90 seconds, every Velkari in the room was dead. Hyjin's team connected to the ship's computer system and began downloading everything. Data secured, one of her soldiers reported. We have their complete communication network, fleet positions, and civilian population centers. Hyjin nodded. She thought about the people who died on the colony ships. She felt no guilt about what she was doing. This was justice. Plant the charges, she ordered. We leave in 30 seconds. The team vanished the same way they arrived. 3 seconds later, the command ship exploded from the inside. The Velkari fleet tried to organize a defense. Warships gathered in formation ready to fight, but they had no targets. Human ships appeared on sensors for only seconds before vanishing again. Missiles were launched but found nothing. Energy weapons fired at empty space. Then the human ships stopped hiding. 5,000 vessels appeared simultaneously around the largest Velkari military fleet. The Velkari admiral ordered his ships to open fire. Thousands of weapons discharged at once, filling space with energy and projectiles. The human ships simply were not there anymore. They had jumped away before the weapons reached them. But their own weapons had already launched. Quantum-entangled missiles that did not need to travel. They just arrived. 300 Velkari warships died in the same instant. The survivors tried to retreat, but human ships appeared in their path. There was nowhere to run. Admiral Jiwoo watched the battle from her command ship. Her screen showed dozens of engagements across the Empire. Everywhere the pattern was the same. Velkari forces tried to fight. Velkari forces died. Human casualties were minimal. A communication came through from Velkari High Command. Commander Valen's face appeared on the screen. He looked desperate. "We surrender," Valen said quickly. "The Velkari Empire offers unconditional surrender. We will accept any terms. Please stop the attacks." Jiwoo looked at him. This was the creature who had broadcast the massacre. This was the voice that had demanded humanity submit. She remembered watching Hana die while this thing smiled. She reached over and closed the communication without saying a word. Surrender was not an option they would be given. "Continue the operation," she ordered her fleet. "All targets must be eliminated." The first day of the war ended with the Velkari military reduced to 30% of its original strength. Their production capacity was destroyed. Their communication network was in chaos. They had no idea how to fight an enemy that could strike from anywhere instantly. In the war room on Earth, Dr. Tae-yang watched the casualty numbers scroll across his screen. 10 billion Velkari dead in the first 24 hours. His weapons had killed 10 billion sentient beings. He stared at the numbers and felt nothing. He thought he should feel something. Horror, guilt, shame. But there was only emptiness. His assistant, a young engineer, stood beside him with tears running down her face. "We are killing so many," she whispered. "What have we become?" Tae-yang turned to her. His voice was flat. "We have become what was necessary. The Velkari killed 7 million of us slowly, making sure we suffered. We are killing billions of them quickly. That is the only mercy we will show." The Galactic Council held an emergency session. Ambassadors from hundreds of species watched the destruction of the Velkari Empire in real time. Some were shocked. Some were horrified. All were terrified. The blue-skinned ambassador who had spoken to Minji stood to address the council. "The humans must be stopped," he said. "They are committing genocide. We told them we could not help them against the Velkari. Now we must help the Velkari against them." Minji stood up in the chamber. Every eye turned to her. She walked calmly to the central podium and activated the main display screen. The screen showed the original broadcast. 7 million humans being executed one by one. Children crying. Parents begging. The Velkari showing no mercy at all. "You all watched this," Minji said quietly. "Every species in this room saw what the Velkari did. We asked for help. You refused. You said the Velkari were too powerful. You said you could not risk war with them. You left us alone." She turned to face the assembled ambassadors. "Now the Velkari are not too powerful. Now you want to help them. Now you care about genocide. Where was this concern when humans were dying? Where was this moral outrage when we begged you for aid?" The chamber was silent. "Any species that interferes with human operations against the Velkari will be considered an enemy of Earth," Minji continued. "We do not want war with you, but we will not stop what we started. The Velkari Empire will end. This was decided the moment they broadcast our people dying for your entertainment." She walked out of the chamber. No one tried to stop her. On the second day of the war, Colonel Sung-ho led ground forces to several Velkari military academies. These were training centers where young Velkari learned to become soldiers. Sung-ho's orders were clear: no survivors. His soldiers moved through the buildings methodically. The young Velkari tried to fight, but they were students facing battle-hardened veterans. It was not a fight. It was an execution. Sung-ho found the academy's commander cowering in his office. The Velkari officer begged for his life. "I am not a soldier anymore," the officer pleaded. "I am a teacher. These are just students. Please show mercy." Sung-ho thought of his unit, the men and women who had died in the initial Velkari attack 18 months ago. Good people, friends. They had not been shown mercy. "You taught them to become soldiers," Sung-ho said. "You taught them to kill. You are part of the military machine that murdered our people. There is no mercy for you." He pulled the trigger. By the end of the third day, the Velkari military had effectively ceased to exist as a fighting force. Scattered ships remained, hiding in remote systems. Small bases continued to operate in isolated locations. But as an organized military power, they were finished. The Velkari civilian government sent a desperate message to Earth. They offered complete surrender. They offered reparations. They offered to dismantle their entire military permanently. They begged for peace. President Jae-hoon read the message. Then he deleted it. Peace was not something the Velkari would receive. Admiral Ji-woo addressed her fleet for the second time. "Phase 1 is complete," she announced. "The Velkari military is destroyed. Phase 2 begins now. All industrial capacity must be eliminated. Every factory, every shipyard, every resource extraction facility. Leave nothing that could rebuild their civilization." She paused and her voice became harder. "We are not fighting a war. We are erasing a species. This will not be quick. This will not be easy. But it will be complete. The galaxy will remember what happens when someone attacks humanity. They will remember the Velkari, and they will remember that we do not forgive." The fleet moved forward. Across hundreds of worlds, human ships appeared in orbit. Below them, Velkari factories continued to operate. Workers unaware that death was coming. The bombardment began. 2 months into the war, the Velkari Empire was broken. Their military was gone. Their factories were rubble. Their ships floated as debris in empty space. But humanity did not stop. Phase 3 began. The elimination of civilian populations. Admiral Ji-woo stood in her command center looking at updated intelligence reports. Her officers had located every Velkari population center. Cities, towns, villages, even remote settlements. The computer had calculated exactly how many Velkari remained alive. 240 billion. She gave the order to proceed. Human ships moved to Velkari civilian worlds. These planets had no defenses, no weapons, just ordinary people trying to survive. They watched human vessels appear in their skies and knew they were going to die. Captain Hyojin received orders to attack a world designated as Velkari Colony 7. Intelligence reports showed the planet was home to 15 million civilians. Most were farmers. There were schools, hospitals, homes where families lived. Hyojin had never questioned an order before. But she hesitated now. Her weapons officer waited for her command. "Captain?" the officer asked quietly. "Your orders?" Hyojin thought of her friends who died on the colony ships. They had been civilians too. Teachers, doctors, farmers. The Velkari had shown them no mercy. "Fire all weapons," she ordered. Her voice was steady. The bombardment lasted 6 hours. When it ended, nothing lived on the planet's surface. 15 million Velkari were gone. That night, 3 of Hyojin's crew members killed themselves. They left notes saying they could not live with what they had done. Hyojin read the notes and felt nothing. Maybe she was already dead inside. On Earth, the first real protests began. Thousands of people gathered in major cities demanding that the government stop the killing. They held signs that read, "No more death and we are better than this." But they were vastly outnumbered by counter-protesters. Millions of people, many wearing pictures of loved ones lost in the massacre, stood in opposition. They held their own signs. "Remember the 7 million and justice has no limits." Violence almost broke out between the groups. Police separated them. The anti-war protesters were escorted away for their own safety. The majority of humanity supported continuing the war until every Velkari was dead. The Galactic Council attempted to intervene. A coalition of 30 species sent their combined fleets to blockade human forces. They hoped to stop the killing through military pressure. The blockade lasted 40 minutes. Human ships appeared around the alien fleet. The coalition forces opened fire first, thinking they had the advantage of numbers. 3,000 alien warships against 500 human vessels. The battle was not even close. Human weapons destroyed alien ships faster than the aliens could track them. The coalition fleet tried to retreat. Human forces let them go, but not before destroying half their ships. The surviving alien commanders returned to the Galactic Council with a message. Humanity had become militarily unbeatable. Any species that interfered would face the same fate as the Velkari. Diplomat Minji was recalled from the Galactic Council. She returned to Earth and met with President Jae-hoon privately. "The galaxy is terrified of us," she reported. "They see what we are doing to the Velkari. They believe we have gone insane. They think we will turn on other species next." Jae-hoon looked older than ever. He had not slept properly in months. "Let them be terrified," he said quietly. "Let every species in the universe know what happens when you attack humanity. Maybe the next empire that thinks about committing genocide will remember the Velkari and choose differently." Dr. Tae Yang worked in his laboratory, developing new weapons even though the war was already won. He had created devices that could ignite planetary atmospheres, destabilize planet cores, and release viruses designed specifically for Velkari biology. His hands shook as he worked. He took pills to stay awake. He took different pills to sleep. He drank to forget what he was doing. Nothing helped. The weapons kept getting more terrible, and he kept building them. A young scientist approached him one day, asking why they needed these new weapons when the Velkari were already defeated. "Because we need to be thorough," Tae-yang explained. "Some Velkari might survive in hidden colonies. Some might escape to distant systems. These weapons ensure that no matter where they hide, we can reach them." The young scientist looked disturbed. Tae-yang understood. He was disturbed too. But the work continued. Yuna made a discovery that changed everything. She found evidence that the Velkari had created genetic archives distributed across the galaxy. These archives contained complete Velkari DNA samples preserved in secret locations. Even if every living Velkari died, their species could theoretically be recreated from these archives. She brought this information to Admiral Jiwoo. "We must find and destroy every archive," Yuna said. "Otherwise our mission is incomplete." Jiwoo assigned 100 ships to hunt down the archives. It took 3 weeks, but they found them all. Space stations hidden in nebulas, bunkers buried on dead worlds, satellites drifting in empty space. Every single archive was located and destroyed. Now there would be no resurrection, no second chance. The Velkari would be truly extinct. Colonel Sung-ho led a raid on what intelligence identified as a Velkari nursery world. The planet was home to only children and their caretakers. No military. No industry. Just young Velkari being raised in safety. Sung-ho's soldiers landed and moved through the facilities. The young Velkari looked at them with large, frightened eyes. They did not understand what was happening. The caretakers tried to shield them with their own bodies. Sung-ho gave the order. His soldiers carried it out. When they left, the world was silent. On the transport back to the fleet, Sung-ho sat alone. He stared at his hands. They were clean, but he could not stop seeing blood. He thought about the line between justice and murder. He wondered which side he was on. He wondered if there was even a difference anymore. 4 months into the war, human intelligence located the last major Velkari population. A fortress world called Velkros Prime, home to approximately 2 million survivors. It was heavily fortified, built to withstand any attack. The Velkari there had no illusions about their fate. They knew humanity was coming. They prepared to make a final stand. Admiral Jiwoo, Dr. Tae-yang, and Captain Hyejin held a private meeting to discuss the final assault. They sat in a conference room on Jiwoo's flagship. 3 people who had helped kill billions, this is the last of them. Jiwoo said, 2 million Velkari. Most are civilians who fled there seeking protection. If we attack, we will lose ships. We will lose people. Our forces are tired. We could stop here and let them live in isolation. Hyejin shook her head. If we stop, we failed. The mission was extinction. 2 million survivors means we left the job unfinished. How can we justify stopping when we are so close? Tae-yang spoke quietly. Can we justify continuing? We set out to prevent the Velkari from ever threatening anyone again. That goal is accomplished. Their military is destroyed. Their empire is rubble. 2 million survivors on one world cannot threaten the galaxy. Are we killing them for revenge or for safety? Jiwoo thought of Hana, her beautiful daughter who wanted to grow plants under alien suns. She thought of 7 million humans who died for no reason except Velkari cruelty. We promised extinction, Jiwoo said. We told them there would be no survivors. If we break that promise, what did all of this mean? What did everyone die for? They sat in silence. No one had a good answer. No one could justify it, but no one could walk away either. The momentum of vengeance was too strong to stop. President Jae-hoon received the request for final authorization. He sat alone in his office, holding a pen over the document. One signature would end the Velkari species forever. Every man, woman, and child. Erasure from existence. He thought about what history would say about this decision. He thought about whether future humans would see him as a monster. He thought about the 7 million who died because the Velkari wanted to make an example of humanity. He signed the authorization. His hand was steady. The order went out to the fleet. Prepare for final assault on Velkros Prime. No prisoners, no mercy. Complete extinction. Human forces gathered around the fortress world. Thousands of ships. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Weapons that could crack planets. They waited for the order to attack. On Velkros Prime, the Velkari prepared to die. They had no hope of victory. They had no chance of survival. But they would not surrender. They would fight until the end. Admiral Jiwoo looked at the planet on her screen. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. The massacre, the grief, the rage, the war, all of it coming down to this final battle. She opened fleet-wide communications. All forces, this is Admiral Jiwoo. Today we finish what the Velkari started. They wanted to show the galaxy their power. They wanted to make us submit. They failed. Today the Velkari Empire dies. Today the galaxy learns what humanity is capable of when pushed beyond our limits. Attack. The fleet moved forward. The final battle for the extinction of an entire species was about to begin. The Velkari fought with the desperation of the doomed. They threw everything they had at the human fleet. Thousands of defensive weapons fired continuously. Suicide attacks crashed ships into human vessels. Ground forces prepared to fight to the last being standing. For the first time in months, humans took real casualties. Ships exploded. Soldiers died in ground combat. The Velkari made humanity pay for every meter of ground, every kilometer of space. But the outcome was never in doubt. Colonel Sung-ho led the ground invasion personally. He landed with the first wave, fighting through defensive positions that the Velkari had spent months preparing. The battles were brutal and close. Sung-ho lost good soldiers, people who had survived the entire war only to die in its final hours. On the third day, Sung-ho's forces reached the central fortress. Inside, the last few thousand Velkari made their final stand. They knew they would die. They fought anyway. When the shooting stopped, Sung-ho stood alone in the fortress command center. Every Velkari was dead. He walked through the halls looking at the bodies. Young and old, soldiers and civilians, all dead. He found the last Velkari in a small room. It was a young female, clutching a data pad with pictures of her family. She looked up at Sung-ho with eyes that showed no fear, only sadness. "We should not have killed your people," she said quietly in perfect English. "My government was wrong. I am sorry for what they did." Sung-ho raised his weapon. His hand shook. This Velkari had probably never hurt anyone. She was just someone trying to survive. But his orders were clear. No survivors. He pulled the trigger. Sung-ho activated his communication device. "Admiral Jiwoo, this is Colonel Sung-ho. All targets eliminated. No survivors detected. Velkros Prime is secure. The mission is complete." He planted the human flag in the ashes of the fortress. Then he sat down and cried for the first time since the war began. Admiral Jiwoo received the confirmation in her command center. She closed her eyes and took a long, deep breath. It was over. The Velkari Empire was extinct. Every single member of their species was dead. She opened fleet communications. "All human forces, this is Admiral Jiwoo. Operation is complete. The Velkari species has been eliminated. You may stand down. Return to your ships. The war is over." Across hundreds of ships, soldiers and crew members heard the announcement. Some cheered. Some cried. Most simply sat in silence, too exhausted to feel anything. On Earth, the announcement was broadcast to the entire planet. Cities did not erupt in celebration. There were no parades, no parties. People gathered in streets and stood together in silence. They had won, but the victory felt hollow. 7 million humans were still dead. Billions of Velkari were now dead too. President Jae-hoon addressed humanity one last time. My fellow humans, today the Velkari Empire has ceased to exist. Their species is extinct. We made a promise and we kept it. This was not done out of hatred. This was done because we could not allow such cruelty to go unpunished. We could not let them threaten anyone else ever again. He paused, looking older than ever. We did terrible things to achieve this. We became something we never wanted to be. History will judge whether our actions were justified. But know this, we will never forget what we are capable of. We will carry this burden forever, and we will make sure that no species ever has reason to fear us, unless they give us reason to fear them first. Dr. Tai Yang watched the president's speech from his laboratory. When it ended, he began destroying his research. Every file, every blueprint, every equation that could recreate his weapons of extinction. He burned physical documents and wiped digital files beyond recovery. It took him 3 days to erase everything. He knew others could potentially recreate the weapons, but he would not make it easy. The knowledge would die with him if he could help it. When he finished, he sat in his empty lab and wondered what he would do with the rest of his life. He had spent 2 years building weapons. Now there was nothing left to build. Captain Hee-jin returned to Earth as a hero. She was awarded humanity's highest military honor for her service. At the ceremony, the president personally placed the medal around her neck. Crowds cheered. Cameras flashed. Hee-jin accepted the medal with a salute. That night, she put it in a small box and never looked at it again. She could not bear to see it. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of the people she had killed, soldiers, civilians, children. They haunted her dreams. She requested transfer to a quiet research station on Mars. No one questioned her decision. Yuna became famous as the youngest scientist to contribute to a major military program. News organizations wanted to interview her. Universities offered her teaching positions. She was only 26 years old and had changed the course of galactic history. In one interview, a journalist asked her how it felt to create such powerful weapons at such a young age. Yuna looked at the camera with empty eyes. "I created weapons that killed billions of living beings," she said flatly. "I was 24 when I designed them. I am 26 now. I will carry what I did for the rest of my life. That is how it feels." The interview ended early. Yuna never spoke to journalists again. The Galactic Council held an emergency session to address the extinction of the Velkari. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to discuss what had happened and what it meant for the future. Some species called for action against humanity. They argued that Earth had gone too far, that genocide could not be tolerated even as revenge. Others argued that humanity had done what was necessary to survive. In the end, no action was taken. Every species was too afraid of humanity to challenge them directly. Earth had demonstrated military superiority beyond anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. No one wanted to be the next target. The Council issued a formal statement recognizing humanity's sovereignty and pledging non-interference in human affairs. It was not friendship. It was fear disguised as respect. Diplomat Minji was appointed as Earth's first ambassador general. Her role was not traditional diplomacy. She was there to remind the galaxy what humanity was capable of. Every species knew that if they threatened Earth, they would face the same fate as the Velkari. Minji accepted the position knowing she would spend the rest of her life as a symbol of terror. Other species would look at her and see death. But if her presence prevented another massacre, she would bear that burden. Colonel Sung-ho returned to Earth a broken man. He underwent psychological evaluation and was diagnosed with severe trauma. The doctors wanted to treat him, but Sung-ho refused. He said the nightmares were appropriate. He said he deserved them. He resigned from the military and moved to a small cabin in the mountains. He spoke to no one. He saw no one. He spent his days chopping wood and his nights remembering faces of the dead. President Jae-hoon did not seek re-election. He stepped down from office 6 months after the war ended. In his farewell address, he did not speak of victory or accomplishment. He spoke only of loss and the weight of decisions that could never be undone. He spent his final days visiting memorials to the 7 million humans who died in the massacre. He read their names. He looked at their faces. He carried the guilt of what he had ordered until the day he died 3 years later. Earth built a monument called the Remembrance. It was a massive structure in Geneva, visible from space. The names of all 7 million massacre victims were carved into black stone. Every name, every face, every life lost. Below the human names, in smaller script, were the names of every Valkyrie killed in the war. 243,800,000,000. The list went on for kilometers. It took years to complete. Admiral Jiwoo visited the Remembrance on the anniversary of the massacre. She walked slowly along the walls, reading names. She found Hana's name carved into the stone and placed flowers beneath it. Then she walked to the Valkyrie section and stood there for hours. She read names. So many names. Beings who had lived and loved and dreamed, all gone because of decisions she had made. She did not apologize to them. She did not regret her choices. But she made sure to remember. That was all she could offer. 50 years passed. The veterans of the war were old now. Most had never spoken publicly about what they did. They carried their memories in silence, teaching younger generations through quiet example rather than proud stories. Humanity had become the unofficial peacekeepers of the galaxy. When conflicts arose between species, they asked Earth to mediate. Not because humans were wise or just, but because everyone feared what would happen if they refused human involvement. No species committed genocide anymore. The memory of the Valkyrie was too fresh. The fear of human response was too real. In a dark way, the extinction had brought stability to the galaxy. A young human student visited the Remembrance as part of a school trip. She walked along the walls of names trying to comprehend the numbers. 7 million humans, 243 billion Valkyrie. The scale was impossible to understand. She asked her teacher a question: were we right to do this? Was killing so many worth it? The teacher, herself a veteran who had served in the war, looked at the walls of names for a long time before answering. I do not know if we were right. I know we felt we had no choice. I know we did what we thought was necessary, and I know we will never forget the cost. That is why we built this memorial, not to celebrate what we did, but to remember it, to make sure future